A motion has been filed for your immediate removal from office. The words echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. I was standing at my desk, reviewing notes for the afternoon session. The announcement came without warning. No prior notice. No private discussion. Just a public declaration that my career was being terminated. Cameras immediately swung toward me from the press gallery. Flashes started popping. Reporters began typing frantically on their devices. Every eye in the room locked onto me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to collapse or protest or defend myself. I stood completely still, face neutral, showing nothing. But inside, my mind was racing. This was not normal procedure. Removal motions required advance notice, required committee review, required documentation submitted days in advance. This was a public execution, deliberate, calculated, designed for maximum humiliation. The speaker continued reading the motion. My alleged violations, my supposed misconduct. Words carefully chosen to sound official while saying almost nothing specific. I glanced around the chamber. Colleagues who had worked with me for years avoided eye contact. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked satisfied. This had been planned, coordinated, and I had walked right into it without seeing it coming. They projected the motion document onto the large screens at the front of the chamber. Every detail visible to everyone present. Every signature clear. I scanned the names at the bottom. 15 signatures required to file a removal motion. All 15 were there. Names I recognized. People I had trusted. Allies I thought I had built relationships with over the years. My deputy director had signed it. 3 committee chairs had signed it. Even the ethics officer had added her signature. Every person who should have been on my side had turned against me. But the signature at the top made my stomach drop. Director Warren Hayes. My mentor. The man who had recruited me into government service 8 years ago. Who had guided my career. Who had recommended me for this position. Who had publicly praised my integrity and dedication. His signature was first. Largest, most prominent. The man who built me was now leading the effort to tear me down. I stared at his name on that screen, trying to understand, trying to find some explanation. But there was none. This was betrayal, pure and simple. And it was happening in front of cameras. In front of the entire city. With nowhere to hide. My name was Nolan Pierce. 41 years old. I had not climbed the ranks of city government quietly or carefully. I challenged systems that did not work. Questioned policies that made no sense. Pushed back against procedures that wasted money or hurt people. That approach had made me effective. It had also made me enemies. I had always known that. Had accepted it as the cost of doing the work correctly. But I had believed in something fundamental. I had believed that doing the right thing would protect me. That integrity mattered. That results spoke for themselves. I had reformed 3 major departments in 6 years. Cut waste. Improved services. Saved the city millions of dollars. My record was spotless. My decisions defensible. My work respected. Or so I had thought. Now I was standing in this chamber, watching my career get destroyed publicly, watching people I trusted sign documents calling for my removal, and I understood something I should have known all along. In government, challenging systems was not rewarded. It was punished, and the people who benefited from those systems would always protect them. Even if it meant destroying someone who tried to fix them. The formal accusations were read aloud next. Clear. Official. Damning. Abuse of authority in contract negotiations. Financial misconduct regarding departmental budgets. Insubordination to superior officers. failure to follow established protocols. Each charge sounded serious. Each was carefully worded. Each was strategically vague. Just specific enough to sound credible. Just vague enough to be impossible to immediately disprove. They did not cite exact incidents, did not reference specific dates, did not name witnesses or provide documentation. Just broad accusations that created an impression of wrongdoing without requiring actual proof. It was brilliant, really. Professionally executed character assassination. The public would hear financial misconduct and assume corruption. Would hear abuse of authority and assume power grabbing. Would hear insubordination and assume I was difficult to work with. None of it required evidence. None of it needed to be true. It just needed to sound bad, needed to create doubt, needed to make my removal seem justified, and it was working perfectly. I could see it in the faces around me. The way people looked at me had already changed. Guilty until proven innocent. Except I would never get the chance to prove anything. That was the entire point. By 6 o'clock that evening, everything was gone. My office was sealed with official notices taped across the door. Security had already changed the locks. My staff had been reassigned to other departments within hours. Not given a choice. Not consulted. Just moved. Like I had already been erased. My access to the building was revoked. My security credentials deactivated. My email account suspended. My parking pass invalidated. In less than 8 hours, I went from running a major city department to being completely shut out. I stood in the parking garage, holding the single box of personal items they had allowed me to collect under supervision. Pictures from my desk. A coffee mug. A few books. Everything else remained locked in my office. Inaccessible. Evidence they claimed they needed to preserve for the investigation. The investigation that would determine whether the removal motion was justified. The investigation that would be conducted by the same people who had signed that motion. The outcome was already decided. This was just process. Just procedure. Just the appearance of fairness while they destroyed me completely. I put the box in my car, drove home, and realized something important. In a single day, I had become a liability. An embarrassment. Someone to distance from. And nobody had even asked if the accusations were true. The news coverage started immediately. Every local channel led with the story. City official faces removal amid misconduct allegations. Controversial director suspended pending investigation. Questions raised about Pierce administration practices. Same narrative on every station. Same framing. Same implications. They showed footage from the chamber. Me standing alone while the motion was read. Looking guilty. Looking caught. Looking exactly like someone who had done something wrong. Nobody questioned the accusations. Nobody asked for evidence. Nobody interviewed colleagues who could speak to my actual record. They just repeated the official script. Broadcast the prepared narrative. Made me the villain in a story they did not understand. Social media was worse. People who had never met me. Who knew nothing about my work. Who had no idea what I had actually done in office. All posting opinions. All convinced of my guilt. Calling for prosecution. Demanding accountability. My name was trending for all the wrong reasons. By morning, my reputation was destroyed. Years of work erased. Career finished. And I had not even been allowed to respond. To speak. To defend myself. Just silence. While everyone else told my story wrong. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying the past few weeks in my mind. Looking for clues I had missed. Trying to understand when this had started. When the plan to remove me had been set in motion. Certain meetings came back to me now with new clarity. 3 weeks ago, Director Hayes had asked me to approve a construction contract. Standard procedure. But something about it felt off. The budget was inflated. The timeline unrealistic. The contractor relatively unknown. I had requested more information before signing. Hayes had seemed annoyed but agreed. 2 weeks ago, another contract came across my desk. Infrastructure upgrades. Same pattern. Inflated costs. Vague specifications. Different contractor, but same red flags. I had delayed approval again. Asked for competitive bids. Demanded better documentation. Hayes had been more direct that time. These approvals are time-sensitive, Nolan. We need to move quickly. I had refused to rush. Had insisted on proper process. 1 week ago, a third contract. Even larger budget. Even less documentation. I had rejected it outright. Sent it back with detailed questions. Hayes had called me into his office. You're creating problems where none exist. Trust the process. I had not trusted it. Had continued asking questions. And now I understood. I had not just disrupted paperwork. I had disrupted something much bigger. I pulled out copies of the accusations again. Read them carefully this time. Looking for specific references. The abuse of authority charge referenced my interference in standard contract procedures. My refusal to rubber stamp those suspicious deals. The financial misconduct allegation cited my unauthorized delays of approved budgets. My insistence on proper documentation before spending taxpayer money. The insubordination claim pointed to my repeated questioning of superior directors. My unwillingness to just sign what I was told to sign. Every accusation was based on a decision I had made. A refusal I had given. A question I had asked. But they had twisted each one. Turned responsible oversight into misconduct. Transformed proper procedure into insubordination. Made due diligence look like obstruction. It was not random. It was calculated. They had taken every instance where I had done my job correctly and weaponized it against me. Every time I had protected taxpayer money. Every time I had demanded accountability. Every time I had refused to play along. All of it was now evidence of my supposed wrongdoing. The pattern was clear, undeniable. This was not about misconduct I had committed. This was retaliation for misconduct I had prevented. I sat at my kitchen table as the sun rose, coffee going cold, understanding finally settling in. This entire situation was not about me breaking rules. It was about me following them. I had not abused my authority. I had used it exactly as intended, to provide oversight, to ask questions, to prevent waste and corruption. And that was the problem. Someone wanted those contracts approved. Someone needed me to stop asking questions. Someone benefited from my removal. When I blocked those deals, I became an obstacle. A problem that needed to be eliminated. So they eliminated me. Used the system against me. Manufactured accusations. Orchestrated a public removal. All because I would not play along. Would not ignore red flags. Would not approve contracts I knew were wrong. The realization was both clarifying and infuriating. I had done everything right. Had acted with integrity. Had protected public interests. And I was being destroyed for it. While the people actually engaged in misconduct were the ones removing me. Using their positions to silence opposition. To clear the path for whatever scheme they were running. It was perfect corruption. Accuse the honest person of dishonesty. Remove the oversight so there is no oversight. And do it all through official channels so it looks legitimate. I made a decision that morning. I would not defend myself publicly. Would not give interviews to the news outlets hounding me. Would not post statements on social media. Would not fight this battle in public where they controlled the narrative. Let them think I was overwhelmed, broken, defeated. Let them believe their plan had worked perfectly, that I was too ashamed to speak, too guilty to defend myself, too finished to fight back. But silence was not surrender. Silence was strategy. While they celebrated my destruction publicly, I would work quietly, gather evidence, build a case, understand exactly what I had stumbled into, who was involved, what they were protecting, how deep the corruption went. They had made a mistake removing me this way. They had shown their hand too clearly, revealed exactly which decisions threatened them, which contracts I should examine more closely, which questions had gotten too dangerous. I was no longer bound by official protocols, no longer restricted by departmental procedures, no longer required to follow chains of command. I was free to investigate however I wanted, to dig wherever the evidence led, and I had nothing left to lose. They had already taken everything. Now I would take something from them, the truth, and I would use it to destroy them the same way they destroyed me. 3 days after my suspension, I received a text from an unknown number. Coffee. Have information you need. Hey, I recognized the initial. Catherine Valdez. Former colleague from my first department. We had worked together years ago before she transferred to budgeting. I had not spoken to her in months. We met at a cafe far from downtown, away from government buildings and people who might recognize us. She looked nervous when she arrived, kept glancing around like she expected to be followed. I'm taking a huge risk meeting you, she said quietly. But I can't stay silent about this. I waited. Let her speak at her own pace. You were right to block that infrastructure contract 3 weeks ago, she continued. I saw the full proposal in budget review. The numbers made no sense. Costs inflated by at least 40%. Timeline designed to justify rushed approvals. Did you report it? I asked. She shook her head. I raised questions. Was told to approve it anyway. That it was already cleared at higher levels. When I hesitated, I was transferred to a different project team. And you weren't the only one who noticed, I said. Not a question. A statement. She met my eyes. No, you weren't the only one who noticed. You were just the only one in a position to stop it. And you weren't the only one who asked questions. You were just the only one they needed to remove. Catherine had brought something with her. A USB drive hidden in her jacket pocket. She slid it across the table like we were in a spy movie. Internal budget records, she whispered. The real ones. Before they were edited for official submission. I copied them before my access was revoked. I took the drive carefully. What's on it? 3 contracts pushed through in the past 2 months. All infrastructure projects. All approved after you were suspended. All with the same pattern you noticed. Inflated budgets. Rushed timelines. Minimal documentation. She leaned forward. But here's what matters. The original budget requests were reasonable. Normal costs. Standard timelines. Then they were revised upward. Massively. Someone changed the numbers after the initial proposals. Made everything cost more. Take longer. Require less oversight. Who revised them? I asked. That's the thing. The revisions don't show an author. No digital signature. No approval chain. Just changes that appeared in the system. Like someone with administrative access went in and altered them directly. My mind was racing. If the budgets were inflated, where did the extra money go? Catherine smiled grimly. That's what you need to figure out. Because it didn't go to the projects. The work being done costs what the original budget said, which means millions of dollars are being diverted somewhere. And you were removed so nobody would ask when. I spent the next week analyzing the files Catherine gave me, cross-referencing contracts, following payment trails, building timelines. A pattern emerged quickly. 3 major contracts, 3 different construction companies, all working on city infrastructure projects. But when I dug deeper into the companies, something strange appeared. Different names, different corporate registrations, different stated ownership, but the same business address for all 3, the same registered agent, the same bank processing their payments. They were not actually different companies. They were shells, different names hiding the same ownership. Someone had created multiple corporate entities to disguise the fact that they were winning every contract, avoiding the competitive bidding requirements, preventing anyone from noticing that the same group was getting millions in city money. I traced the ownership backwards, through layers of holding companies and corporate structures designed to obscure the trail. It took days, required accessing public records from multiple states, cross-referencing business licenses and tax filings, but eventually I found it. One name kept appearing, hidden behind shell companies and legal entities, never listed as direct owner, always as consultant or advisor or registered agent, but undeniably connected to all 3 contractor companies. Someone powerful was hiding behind this structure. Someone with enough resources to create this elaborate system. Someone with enough access to manipulate city contracts. And I was about to find out who. The name I found made me sick. Hayes Holdings, LLC, a private investment company. Registered in Delaware. Minimal public information available. But the registered agent was someone I recognized. Director Warren Hayes, my mentor, the man who had built my career, who had guided me through government service, who had signed the motion to remove me. I sat staring at that business registration for an hour, not wanting to believe it, looking for another explanation, some reasonable connection that did not mean what it clearly meant. But there was no other explanation. Warren Hayes owned an investment company. That investment company was connected to the shell corporations. The shell corporations were winning inflated city contracts. Contracts I had blocked. Contracts that were approved immediately after my removal. He had not removed me because I committed misconduct. He had removed me because I was preventing his misconduct. Every contract I delayed cost him money. Every question I asked threatened his scheme. Every demand for documentation risked exposing the whole system. I was not fired for doing my job wrong. I was fired for doing it right. For being the one person in a position to stop him who actually tried to stop him. The betrayal was complete. The man I trusted most, the person who had shaped my entire career, had been using me, positioning me in roles where I could help protect his corruption, until I started actually doing my job. Then he destroyed me to protect himself. I kept digging. Now that I knew what to look for, the evidence was everywhere. Hayes Holdings had connections to 6 different city contracts over the past 3 years. Not just recent ones. This had been running for years. Millions of dollars in inflated budgets. Millions diverted to companies he controlled. All hidden behind shell corporations and approved through official channels. He had used his position as director to influence contract approvals, to rush timelines, to limit oversight, to ensure his companies won bids. And when anyone got too close to discovering it, he had them removed or transferred. Like Catherine, like others I was now discovering. People who had asked questions, raised concerns, demanded accountability, all quietly moved to different positions, different departments, different roles where they could not interfere. I had just been too senior to transfer quietly, too visible to simply move. So he had destroyed me publicly instead. used accusations to remove me, turned my integrity into insubordination, made my oversight look like obstruction. It was personal now, not just about clearing my name, not just about exposing corruption. This was about the man who betrayed me, who used me, who destroyed my career to protect his profit, and I was going to make him pay for it, not with violence, not with revenge, with truth, with evidence, with exposure, the same way he destroyed me, just more thoroughly, more completely, more permanently. I did not rush, did not immediately release what I had found. That would have been a mistake. Hayes still had power, still had connections, still controlled the narrative. If I went public now, he would bury it, discredit me, use my suspension against me. Disgraced official makes wild accusations. Removed director blames others for his misconduct. The media would dismiss it. The public would not believe it. And the evidence would die before anyone seriously investigated. So I kept gathering, kept documenting, kept building. Emails between Hayes and the shell company executives. Approval chains showing his fingerprints on every rushed contract. Financial records proving the money trail. Testimony from other officials who had been silenced. Every piece of evidence carefully organized. Every claim backed by multiple sources. Every accusation proven 6 different ways. I built a case that could not be denied, could not be spun, could not be dismissed as the desperate lies of someone trying to shift blame. This was not about my word against his. This was about documented proof, hard evidence, undeniable facts. It took weeks, patient, methodical, careful, but I had time, I had motivation, and I had nothing else to focus on. While Hayes thought I was broken and defeated, I was preparing. Building something that would not just expose him. Something that would destroy him completely. An anonymous package arrived at my apartment 4 weeks after my suspension. No return address. No note. Just a padded envelope with a USB drive inside. I almost did not open it. Could have been a virus. Could have been a trap. But curiosity won. The drive contained audio files. Recordings of private conversations. I recognized the voices immediately. Warren Hayes and corporate executives. Discussing contracts. Negotiating payments. Agreeing on how to structure bids. We need to keep the official budget around $12 million, Hayes' voice said clearly. But the actual cost will be 7. The difference gets processed through consulting fees. And Pierce won't question it, another voice asked. Pierce is being handled, Hayes replied. If he becomes a problem, we'll remove him. I've already got the documentation ready. Just need the right moment. The recordings were dated 2 weeks before my removal motion was filed. 2 weeks before I was publicly destroyed. He had been planning this. Preparing for it. Recording these conversations was incredibly risky for whoever did it. They had evidence of crimes. Evidence that could destroy Hayes. And they had just given it to me. Anonymously. Without explanation. I did not know who sent it. Did not know why. But I knew what it meant. Someone else wanted Hayes exposed. Someone with access to his private conversations. Someone willing to take risks. And they had just handed me the final piece of evidence I needed. I now had everything required to destroy Warren Hayes. Documented proof of corruption. Financial records showing the scheme. Audio recordings of him planning it. Testimony from silenced officials. But timing mattered more than evidence. Release it wrong, and they would bury it. Discredit it. Make it disappear. I needed a stage Hayes could not control. A platform where the truth would be impossible to suppress. Where evidence would have to be examined objectively. where official responses would be required. I needed something public, official, impossible to dismiss. For weeks, I searched for the right opportunity, considered different options, evaluated possibilities. Nothing felt right. Nothing gave me the platform I needed. Then the opportunity appeared, announced in an official memo. My formal removal hearing, required by city regulations, scheduled for 6 weeks after the initial motion. Public hearing, televised coverage, official record. Hayes would testify, present his case, list my violations. The hearing was designed to finalize my removal, make it permanent, give him the victory. But it would also give me something. A platform, an audience, a moment where I could present evidence officially, where it would become part of the public record, where suppression would be impossible. Hayes had scheduled his own exposure, built the perfect stage for his destruction, and he had no idea I was bringing evidence, no idea I had proof, no idea his hearing would become his downfall. The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning, 10 a.m., City Council chambers. I spent every day before it preparing, organizing evidence into presentations, writing testimony, anticipating counterarguments, preparing responses. I knew Hayes would try to discredit me, would lean on my suspension, would use the accusations against me, would make this about my character, not his crimes. So I prepared to make it about evidence, facts, documentation, things that could not be dismissed or explained away. I rehearsed my presentation, practiced staying calm, prepared for every possible disruption or deflection. This was my one chance, my only opportunity. I could not waste it. Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear. I put on my best suit, the same one I had worn 8 years ago when Hayes recruited me, when I thought he was a mentor worth following. Today I would wear it for different reasons. I drove to the city building, same place where I had been suspended, where my career had ended. Now I was walking back in, with evidence, with truth, with the ability to destroy the person who destroyed me. Security recognized me at the entrance, looked uncertain whether to let me through. I'm here for my removal hearing, I said calmly. Check the schedule. They did. Reluctantly allowed me to pass. I walked into those chambers, found a seat, and waited for my moment. Warren Hayes was already at the main table when I entered, surrounded by lawyers, looking confident, prepared. He glanced at me briefly, face showing nothing, no guilt, no concern, just professional detachment, like I was a problem already solved. The council members took their seats, cameras positioned throughout the room, journalists filling the press gallery. This would be broadcast live. Everything that happened here would be public record, permanent. The chairman called the hearing to order, explained the procedures, then turned to Hayes. Director Hayes, please present your case for the removal of Mr. Pierce. Hayes stood, walked to the podium, began his presentation. Professional, calm, systematic. He listed my violations, cited my insubordination, referenced my abuse of authority, made me sound reckless, dangerous, unfit for office. His evidence was the same vague accusations from the original motion. No specific incidents, no real documentation, just carefully worded implications. But he delivered it well, made it sound convincing, made me look guilty. When he finished, the chairman turned to me. Mr. Pierce, you have the right to respond to these accusations. Do you wish to make a statement? I stood, walked to the podium, looked directly at the cameras. Yes. But I'm not here to defend myself. The room went quiet. I'm here to present evidence of corruption. Evidence involving the person trying to remove me. Hayes's face changed. First time I had seen him look uncertain. I'm here to expose exactly why I was removed, and who benefited from it. I addressed each accusation calmly, systematically. The charge of abuse of authority references my refusal to approve certain contracts. Let me be clear about what I actually did. I delayed approval of contracts that showed obvious red flags. Inflated budgets. Insufficient documentation. Suspicious timelines. The council members were listening carefully now. The accusation of insubordination refers to my questions about these same contracts. Questions I asked because it's literally my job to provide oversight, to protect taxpayer money, to ensure proper procedure. I paused. Let that sink in. So yes, I refused to rubber stamp questionable contracts. Yes, I asked difficult questions. Yes, I demanded accountability. But that's not misconduct. That's exactly what I was hired to do. Then I shifted, changed direction completely. Now let's talk about something more interesting. Let's talk about the contracts I refused to sign. Let's examine who benefited when those contracts were approved after my removal. Let's follow the money. The room shifted. Hayes sat up straighter. His lawyers looked at each other. Because this isn't really about my misconduct. This is about the misconduct I prevented, and the people who needed me removed to continue it. I had their attention now. Complete attention. Let me show you exactly what I mean. I submitted my first document. The inflated contract budgets. The shell company connections. The evidence was going into the official record, and there was nothing Hayes could do to stop it. I presented the financial records Catherine had given me, showed the council the before and after budgets, original reasonable costs, revised inflated amounts, 3 contracts, same pattern. Budgets increased 40% after initial proposal. No explanation. No justification. Just more money. The council members were studying the documents, frowning, asking questions. Different companies won these contracts. But look closer at the ownership. I displayed the corporate records, the shell company structures, the hidden connections. Same registered agent, same business address, same bank accounts. These aren't different companies. They're the same entity hiding behind multiple names, created specifically to avoid competitive bidding requirements. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Hayes's lawyers were whispering urgently. And where did the extra money go? Not to the projects. The actual work costs matched the original budgets, which means millions of dollars were diverted, stolen through inflated contracts and hidden ownership. I paused. Let them absorb that. I refused to approve these contracts because something was obviously wrong. And within days of my removal, all 3 were pushed through. Approved by the very people who signed my removal motion. The narrative was breaking. The story Hayes had told was falling apart. The council members were looking at him differently now. Not as the wronged director. As someone who needed to answer questions. But there's more, I said. Much more. I played the audio recordings next. The anonymous source's gift. Hayes's voice filled the chamber through the speaker system. Clear. Unmistakable. We need to keep the official budget around 12 million. But the actual cost will be 7. The difference gets processed through consulting fees. Silence in the room. Everyone listening. And Pierce won't question it. Pierce is being handled. If he becomes a problem, we'll remove him. I've already got the documentation ready. The chamber erupted. Journalists typing frantically. Council members talking over each other. Cameras zooming in on Hayes. His face had gone pale. Completely pale. His lawyers were standing. Objecting. Claiming the recordings were inadmissible. Demanding to know where they came from. These recordings are evidence of criminal conspiracy, I said calmly. Evidence of Director Hayes planning contract fraud. Evidence of him planning my removal weeks before it happened. Not because I committed misconduct. Because I was preventing his. The chairman was banging his gavel, trying to restore order, but chaos had taken over. The truth was out. Public. Recorded. Undeniable. Hayes tried to speak. Started to stand. But I was not finished. There's one more thing the council needs to see, I said. The final piece that connects everything. I displayed the last document. The corporate registration for Hayes Holdings. His name clear. His connection to the shell companies undeniable. His ownership of the fraud scheme proven. Everything unraveled in seconds. The entire plan. The whole conspiracy. All exposed publicly. Permanently. On camera. In the official record. Hayes stood frozen. Unable to speak. Unable to defend. Unable to do anything except watch his world collapse. Warren Hayes tried to respond. Opened his mouth to speak. His lawyers were pulling him back. Whispering urgently. Telling him to stay quiet. To invoke his rights. But the damage was done. The evidence was public. The audio had played. The documents were submitted. Every council member had copies. Every journalist had recorded it. Every camera had broadcast it live. The chairman called for an emergency recess. Announced that law enforcement would be contacted immediately. Federal prosecutors would review the evidence. Criminal investigations would be opened. Hayes's lawyers surrounded him. Escorted him quickly toward the exit. But not before our eyes met one final time across the chamber. He looked at me with something between rage and disbelief. Like he could not understand how this had happened. How I had survived. How I had gathered evidence. How I had destroyed him. I held his gaze. Said nothing. Just watched him leave. The man who had built me. The mentor who betrayed me. The person who destroyed my career to protect his corruption. Now facing criminal charges. Facing prosecution. Facing prison. Within an hour, news of the hearing spread everywhere. Every channel broadcasting the audio. Every website posting the documents. Social media exploding with reaction. The same media that had destroyed me 6 weeks ago was now destroying Hayes. The same narrative they ran about my misconduct now focused on his crimes. They did not apologize for getting my story wrong. They just pivoted, changed targets, moved on. But I did not care about their apologies. I cared about the investigations that were starting, the arrests that would follow, the accountability that was finally coming. The council reconvened 3 hours later. Pale, shaken. The chairman spoke carefully. In light of the evidence presented today, this council unanimously agrees to withdraw the removal motion against Mr. Pierce. Additionally, we are referring all materials to federal prosecutors. Director Hayes has been suspended pending criminal investigation. The same people who had signed my removal motion now distanced themselves from Hayes, claimed they had been deceived, said they never knew about the corruption, insisted they were victims too. Politics, self-preservation, covering their tracks. Some probably were innocent, others definitely were not, but the investigations would sort that out. For now, my removal was cancelled, my suspension lifted, my career technically restored. Though I had no interest in returning. The chairman looked at me. Mr. Pierce, would you like to make a statement? I stood, walked to the podium one final time, looked directly at the cameras. They didn't try to remove me because I failed at my job, I said clearly. They tried to remove me because I refused to be part of their corruption, because I asked questions, demanded accountability, protected taxpayer money, did exactly what I was hired to do. I paused. In government, you don't get punished for being wrong. You get punished for refusing to be part of it, for standing in the way of people who benefit from broken systems. The room was completely silent. They thought removing me would protect their scheme. Instead, it exposed it. Because the truth is simple. When powerful people destroy you for doing the right thing, it proves you were doing the right thing. I looked at where Hayes had been sitting, and that's what they regret most. Not the crimes they committed. Just that they chose the wrong person to destroy. I walked out of that chamber. Free. Vindicated. In control.